Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, in life, and all points in between. Today, very excited to have Stacy Sherman with us. We're going to talk about how to close the gap between good CX and doing CX right. Stacy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Stacy's a global customer experience thought leader, keynote speaker, and founder of Doing CX Right, where she helps organizations humanize business and turn CX into a competitive advantage. That's your short and sweet description. But Stacy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your own personal journey and then what you're doing with CX for clients?
Yeah, my personal journey is not a straight line whatsoever. I started back in the day thinking that marketing was what I was going to do forever. And it was created by the fascination of subliminal advertising in high school. And I was like, this is fascinating consumer mindsets. And why do we do what we do? And why do we get fascinated by certain things and not. And so I went on to graduate school, continued my marketing learnings, worked at AT&T, my first job in marketing and then sales. And so life continued at different companies. And at some point, there was a fork in the road. I think it was maybe when I was at Verizon, and they said, marketing and sales are very important, but there's this thing called CX,
Hmm.
customer experience, and they threw me the ball and I caught it and I said, "What do I do with it?" And this is before CX was even a word, and they said, "I don't know. Go figure it out." This particular boss of mine. And so I did, and I continued to go on that path for many, many years in different companies and industry and understand, why is customer experience different than customer service, by the way? What is the difference? Why is it so important? And how to do it right so that you really get business success. And so 2.5 years ago, I went out on my own to help companies really be able to differentiate their brands in the way that I've learned as a practitioner.
That's great. And we should we should let people know that Stacy is subliminally flashing the message you're doing CX wrong throughout the show. That's funny about the subliminal. Um, you just brought up a good point there, though. It's not customer service. There's a difference. Can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yes, it's really important. In fact, I get edgy when people say customer service all the time when they mean customer experience. So, customer service is what you think about when you call reactive to a problem, an 800 number, a chat bot. You go to the retail store, you're asking for help for a very specific problem, typically a problem. People don't usually call customer service and say, "Hey, I'm having a great day," or "I really love your product." It's not really, that's not what happens as much. So, what customer experience is, think about a journey. So, how somebody learns, becomes aware, learn about your product and services and your brand, learn, buy, sales, being retail. They can buy from e-commerce, right? A lot of different ways you can purchase. Learn, buy, get, use, pay. Huge, huge point in that
Mm.
journey. If that goes wrong, the rest of it doesn't matter. And then get help, which is the customer service point. And so all of those micro moments are really what define the experience, and you have to design that whole entire experience very intentionally, which we can go into some of the how to's. But the point is, customer experience is that big journey. It's journey management in a way.
Yeah, and you beat me to the punch there because I was thinking it sounds like the customer journey, and when you were talking about being very deliberate about it and calculate, I don't know if that was the word you used, but um we try and do that. That's always marketers are always thinking about what's the customer journey. And the truth of the matter is, like, the customer journey, you might plot it out, but the customers like go in their own direction, right? Like, and they do it in their journey is everybody's journey is unique, I guess is what I'm saying. Does that hold true even though you plan that customer experience? Does that matter how they experience it?
Great question. So, first point is your customers are on a journey with or without you, number one. Number two, you might as well design it intentionally. Now, what you just said is so super important because what happens is a lot of companies create an experience that they think that customers want from the inside, but then they forget to go to the actual real customer and validate. Let me say it again. Validate that what you created is actually meeting their needs and then going back and fixing the gaps of what you created for them versus what they want and that iterative process. And it's not just one time.
It's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about what you think people are really missing, and companies in general are missing about creating real growth and loyalty. I mean, that was one of the topics that you highlighted that you want to talk about, and that seems like something that seems like a jump from customer experience. No,
Growth and loyalty?
it's not.
Uh, well, let me there's so much I could say about this, but one important mindset that people need to have. Getting new sales, acquisition is exciting, it's sexy, but you forget to love the ones you have. And
Mm,
they're the ones that already bought from you, and you have the chance to get them to activate them to buy again, to tell others, to be your brand advocate, which is far less expensive, right, to go after brand new. So that's where real growth can happen, and there's a lot of ways to do that, but that's a big miss that I'm emphasizing. Love the ones you have.
right. And you're talking about the customers. Does the and we'll get into this more, I'm sure, but the customer experience, does that only apply to the external customers, or but we also need to be thinking about internal customers as well? Do you get into that as well?
There is no external customer without the internal experience. It doesn't exist. They go hand in hand. And so, yes, when I talked about designing that customer journey, there's a partner journey, there's an employee journey. And so, yes, it's all of this intentional design for the various emotions that people go through and have. Emotions is the experience. And if the internal team doesn't feel really great about the experience they're having inside the brand, they cannot pay it forward. Not possible.
You mentioned that word emotion before. I'm not sure if this was before we came on or during the early parts of the call, but how important that is. And can you give us some examples of that and how that appears during the customer experience?
Yes. So, one myth I need to debunk is emotions don't belong in business. But humans have emotions, customers have emotions. So if you take the emotions out, you have no customer. Think about when, let's see, for me, I got a call recently. I had to, from my doctor, I had to go to the lab, get blood work. Okay. Now, mind you, I was a little bit anxious because I had to go to a family reunion on the West Coast. And I had a few days, but it's just like I had no time for anything to go wrong and get on that plane. So I was in business mode. I got the call. I went onto the website, the lab, and made that appointment. And everything was very easy to do, navigating, getting the appointment, all good. And then it said, you're going to get an email that said, you're going to get a QR code that you bring to the lab. It's going to make it so easy to get in and out. Okay, well, good. Everything's positive. Check, one check, positive. But I never got the email.
Oops.
Uh-huh. So I then had to take the action, and I went onto the website again, and I'm chatting with the agent bot, and I don't get where what I needed. I had to actually say 3 times, "Can I have a human? Human, human. How am I feeling?" Negative. Probably 3 negatives. So 1 positive so far, 3 negatives. Eventually, I ended up having to repeat myself to the human agent, frustrated me more. I ultimately then called the 800 number and went through a series of IVR prompts and. So more negatives. Now I haven't even gotten to the lab yet, and I'm having all of these negative experiences and frustration. And by the way, this is all the emotion and the thinking as we interact with a brand. It's very automatic.
Yeah.
It's just going, going, going. But it's the emotion of each of those that leaves the imprint in our head. That is the experience. Going forward, I get to the parking lot at the lab. I pull out the QR code before I'm going to walk in. I know this is going to be fast and easy. By the way, as I got the QR code in the parking lot, it asked me a survey. How's your experience? Really? You're asking me how's my experience? I didn't even have the experience yet at the lab.
Huh. Wow.
So that's making me feel wow and kind of negative. So now I walked into the lab feeling negative. I get there, the machine that I use the QR code, there's 3 machines and only 1 is working. Thankfully, there wasn't a long line at the lab, but it was prime hours, and if it was and I had to wait with 1 machine working, that's like extra, extra negative, 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 negatives. Um, I finished the QR code, I check in, and then it asks me to go to the human at the front desk because I have to give my credit card in case something goes wrong with insurance. So I'm thinking and feeling, "Well, then why did I have to go to the machine? I could have just done all this with the human."
Right.
At the desk, there's all these signs on the walls. I took pictures because I couldn't believe it. It said customer service is so important and everyone has that role, and smiles positive energy. Meanwhile, that human being, that male, never even looked up at me.
Wow.
Forget the smile. We never made eye contact. So
Wow.
the signs was all wall art. And anyway, the series goes on of this story. I got my blood work done, and she did her thing, she did her job. And the funny part at the end, not so funny, but funny, is that as I'm leaving, I go into the restroom, and I wash my hands, and that paper towel dispenser is stuck, and so I get this tiny little sliver of paper of a paper to dry my hands. How do you think I'm feeling through all of those micro moments? Positive or negative?
I think negative. I'm getting that vibe.
Oh, you are so smart. Tons of negative. That's what I mean, because it's the emotion that I am left with. And there's another lab, by the way, right down the street. I will be going there instead next time.
And don't you think that, I mean, our expectations are so high for customer experience? I mean, we want things super fast. We want them to be seamless and smooth. And I mean, you've been in technology for years. You know that there's glitches, you know that there's problems. In that whole situation that you just described, what could they have done better?
Love that question. So, yes, they nobody's perfect, and when mistakes happen, people are gonna be more forgiving when you do CX right. So, doing CX right could have meant that I had less channels to go through to get the QR code in the first place. I wouldn't have had to repeat it myself from the bot to the human to then the agent on the phone who had no record. There was nothing seamless. The communication didn't go across channels. Likewise, when I got to the parking lot, don't serve me a survey. It made me feel like you're just checking a box. You don't really care about my
Right.
experience. You just want to say you do surveys.
Right.
And then even when I was on site and I'm dealing with the technology, did the QR code, I checked in. Now you're having me go to the human, like, what could have happened between those 2 interactions? Did you really need both? Could there have been a sign on the 2 machines that were broken to give a little bit more clarity on, "This is what's going on, we're gonna have this fixed in 24 hours," like, something to let the customer know, like, "We're so sorry, like, here's an explanation." The human, when he took my credit card, "Hi, how are you today? I know getting blood's not fun, but we're gonna have you in and out quickly, I promise." Like, some acknowledgement.
Yeah.
So these are these different experiences that by the time I got to the bathroom and there was no paper towel left in this little piece,
The last straw.
it would have been like just like a no big deal, but it's just like the last thing, right,
Yeah.
the straw that I tell you about.
Yeah. Right. And, uh, I remember reading something about when you try and fix something and you're not quite sure what the problem is, you can actually do more harm than good. So if we come in and we say, we're going to improve the customer experience and we're just going to do this whole new process, it sounds like what you're describing is maybe there was good intentions, but they actually wound up probably doing more harm than good. Is that the case? I mean, should you I like what you said before about listen, ask the customer before you proceed.
Voice of customer is gold. And so the lab, probably the corporate people know that because they popped a survey. In fact, there were 2 just at the wrong times.
Mhm.
So they want feedback, but do they in this case?
Yeah.
And then what companies do wrong that they can do right is ask for the feedback at the right moments, the right peak moments, but do something with the feedback and tell the customer, "Because of what you told us, this is what we did to improve the experience." They fall short in closing that loop.
A good friend of mine, Joseph Lewin, talks about listen, then sell, then build, then scale. And I mean, he's talking about marketing, but I think that's really true about we just want to barrel ahead and build with what we think is right. And we just totally ignore the listen part. And then maybe the sell part with what you're saying is okay, maybe you listened and maybe you did change it, but does it actually work, right? Are they actually liking it? And so that whole process you just described to me was maybe, I don't know how many, I wasn't keeping count, but 8 to 10 steps. How could they have done that differently to implement it, to sell it, and see if each step worked?
Yeah, that goes back to designing with your internal partners, teams. What is that experience? And now taking that, what I went through, in fact, I feel like sending this real experience to the lab corporate, and I'm not bad mouthing anyone. That's why I'm keeping the name off for
Yeah.
this moment. But they could then say, wow, I didn't even realize there was that many steps because companies are so siloed. And that's the key. take all your different departments and bring people to the table together and help them understand the domino effect. What's the customer saying to you, either directly through your surveys or unsolicited on social media and ratings and reviews, as an example, and the chat logs and the customer service calls. Bring all that together and look at and prioritize the pain points and use that to make it better. And it's not hard and it doesn't need to be so expensive. In fact, it's not expensive to bring your team together and help each person understand how they have a customer experience role and where the impact they're making as collectively, as a team. Because guess what? Your customers don't see org charts. They see one company.
It's so true. And it's, they have a stake in keeping those customers. Those customers, if they stay, that's revenue for them. Uh, one of your points is that this doing this CX right matters far more than you think. What do you mean by that?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the emotions that matter far more than you think. And think is the operative word because companies are so rational. They're
Right.
so transactional.
Yep.
And that's what I'm saying. They're ignoring the emotions that people fear. And here's an example where AI is here, and the reality is that people, especially employees, they're fearful. So rather than ignore that and pretend that's not real and just keep shoving things onto your team, acknowledge the fear, help them embrace using the technology, allow them. Simulation is such a cool tool where your customer service agents or your sales team can practice with AI simulation before they actually go to a real customer and make their mistakes, and it can act like a real human. So that's why I say the technology, giving people the confidence, using the tools to do that. You can't ignore that. If you do, you're flying blind and you're going to end up with a lot of employee loss and customer loss.
Now, in your specific case, you were going in to give blood and get a blood test, and very specific transactional type of encounter with the company. I want to take a step back. I mean, we do a lot of work with B2B companies. Tell me a little bit about the role of, I think you talked about everything you just described. There was a lot of people who had that customer experience interaction. And I know there's a lot of people behind them. I'm a little curious about the role of the executive in all this, in the customer experience. Can you walk me through how they would play a part in this and how they can help it?
Yeah. So in my keynote speech, I really emphasize that everyone from CEO to your interns and everyone in between must be accountable for customer experiences. And so with leaders, I work with them and I help them understand and spotlight ways that they can really get close to the customer and know what's it like in their shoes, as well as what's it like in your team's shoes. Listen to customer service calls. Listen for the emotion and what they're saying. Don't just read, your revenue charts. Go walk in the retail store, almost like undercover boss, but not
Mhm.
always even undercover. Um, Make sure that you go buy from your company. Experience it. There's so many tactics you can do. And when leadership is doing that, it sends a significant message to your teams and makes them feel like you get them. And when you do, they feel more empowered. They feel more committed to delivering excellence.
Yeah, I remember I was my first job out of college, I was, supervising some phone operators for the transit system, and, I went out with them and I said they were supposed to give route information for the bus system here in Madison. I said, I got on calls and I listened to them and I went out and I actually we took the operators out and we rode the bus routes so we could figure out and got on the bus. And I swear it helped me a lot, but it also I could feel the trust come from the team that I knew I was in the trenches with them. And do you see when you give that kind of guidance to executives, is there some way that you measure that or you can get some sort of progress and show the impact that has?
Absolutely, and I work with executives and leaders and managers of teams to measure that. And if companies are beginning their CX journey, it's okay to start with NPS, Net Promoter Score, and measure level of effort to do business with you. It's one of my favorite, but I have more that really get to the answers. Are you doing CX right? And so you're you're spot on. You have to measure it and you can get very granular. That's another show, another day.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left. Can you take us through the right framework?
Yeah, so there's a lot behind doing CX right, which is different than just doing CX. So I'll give you one of them in terms of the right way. R is repeatable, consistency. Think about your most favorite brands and why do you buy from them? Zappos is a great example. When you call customer service, you know that you're going to have the best experience with that rep. They don't put you on hold, they don't transfer you. It is predominantly consistent all the time, and even how they deliver on the promise is consistent. If you think about some favorite products, Haagen-Dazs, cookies and cream, anywhere I am, if I go to the store or I go to the grocery store, anywhere, I know that that quality is gonna be consistent, and I love it. Right? Heinz ketchup, Trader Joe's, there's so many brands that consistently deliver. And so how do you feel when you have this expectation of what a brand is gonna deliver and then they don't? It's a big letdown. And that happens even in scenarios like I call the airlines and I get one answer from calling the 800 number and I get a different answer from the chat agent. And I'm thinking, aren't you on the same team? And so what happens is I play them. I call one and chat with the other until I get the answer I want. I mean, that's just dumb.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
okay. So, that was repeatable. Are
I'll
we
give
going
you
through
one more. I'll give you
okay,
one more
sure.
because I want people to call me to know the
Yeah,
rest.
that's fine.
So I'll go into I as intentional. Intentional means around that these experiences don't happen automatically or overnight. It is very intentional that people will bring their cross teams together, bring them to a round table or a virtual round table, and whiteboard or back of the napkin, go through what it's like to be your customer and every single micro moment. And then that validation process and the measurement process, all of that has to be intentional because many times people are just throwing darts or hoping it's great and they don't really know. Same with your internal experience. So that's why intentionality is so essential for doing it right.
Okay. Um, let's, one last question. I asked you this before. Are we just talking about obviously, when I think a lot of people hear CX, they think digital, at least me. Is it online, offline? And I think you said it's both, right?
Yes, great question. I mean, digital is really what people think about UX, user experience, and
Okay.
user design, which is very important, and it's a component of CX.
Okay.
I'm trained in that, but CX is really a holistic view of how people interact with your brand. And it can be in the retail store, it could be at a lab on site. Remember, I had the digital experience to get the appointment, but then I
Right.
had to go to the lab.
Yeah.
It's it's the whole entire holistic, journey that people have with your brand, and if it could be very simple and just one touch point, or it could be a lot, and you can't ignore any of those micro moments. So great question, and if people are like, "Whoa, that sounds so complicated," or "I don't even know where to start," pick one point in the journey where you think that revenue is dropping off. And
And I
and
think
and
these
call me. I'll tell you.
I think too these the small changes really add up, and sometimes um, we get overwhelmed by these big processes, but just you could probably put together a lot of small changes, and they could make a huge impact.
That's like a life too.
That's right. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for coming on. Some really great insights. If somebody wants to work with you and find out about the GHT and right, CX right, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I welcome it. So doingcxright.com is, my website and my contact form and my newsletter that's free and tons of good valuable information. I'm also have a podcast, called Doing CX Right. And, yeah, I mean, just Google, you'll find me everywhere, and I'm very happy to share valuable insights and ways to do it right to differentiate your brand, uh, business and professionally too.
And you gotta believe if you're gonna contact Stacy, it's gonna be an amazing CX, you're gonna have amazing customer experience. So, um, fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us on this episode of Thought Leaders Live.